somebody's telephone or some other device that tells seconds.
Yeah, may I borrow that? I do love old-fashioned. Now we know self-identified dinosaurs. No, thank you so much. Now he's assuming that I, as a lawyer, know how to count and tell the
All right, Senator Cammack.
I do have a question. When it comes to the Libertarian platform, and specifically the Libertarian platform and its 3.4 is when it comes to free trade and immigration, in there it states that we support the removal of government impediments to free trade, political freedom, escape from tyranny, and demand that individuals not be unreasonably constrained by government in the crossing of political borders. Economic freedom demands the unrestricted movement of human as well as financial capital across national borders. I would like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, our national immigration system has some severe issues. It takes years to get permission to come into this country, and a lot of people are just flat denied. Illegal immigration is an issue. It's largely a racist issue. There are people with certain skin colors and from certain countries that we welcome, and some ones with certain skin colors that we have a big problem with them coming. This has got to be addressed at a national level. America is a country of immigrants. There are a lot of people worldwide that would love to come here. We need to welcome them as much as we can. What we can do about immigration at the state level, I don't know, but we've got to remove some of the barriers to letting people that want to come here and work and contribute to this country and better themselves. We've got to figure out a way to get them here.
All right. A question from you for Mr. Mack.
Sir, where do you stand on eminent domain? What's the legitimate uses for it?
On eminent domain, I believe without the tool of eminent domain, that we wouldn't have a lot of the things in place that make this country great, like the interstate highway system, like the power grid, like a lot of things. The eminent domain should be used judiciously, and it should be used with restraint. But having said that, we need to make sure that that tool is not necessarily taken away, so that we can accomplish some of these things for the public good.
Any rebuttal? Remember, you guys always have rebuttal option after you've asked your question and they've responded. Remember, these poor people are used to watching people on TV. They would love to see you actually get into them. I'm just kidding. I'm all for statesmanship. All right, Senator Cammack, what is your next question for candidate Wilsey?
My next question would be, in the platform for the Libertarian Party, it stated that in 2.4, when it comes to government finances and spending, all persons are entitled to keep the fruits of their labor. We call for the repeal of income tax, the abolishment of the Internal Revenue Service, and all federal programs and services not required under the U.S. Constitution. We oppose any legal requirements forcing employers to serve as tax collectors. We support any initiative to reduce or abolish any tax and oppose any increase on any tax for any reason. To the extent possible, we advocate that all public services be funded in a voluntary manner. And I guess my question would be, how would the mechanics of this work?
I guess that answer, wouldn't that be nice? I don't know how better to say. That kind of has to be the goal. is to minimize your tax burden. I truly, okay, we're both business owners. We both collect sales tax. That's kind of what that's part of. Of all the things you've done, Gary, I really don't like, and I told a million people this, that you raised our sales tax. I hate that. I can't believe there wasn't something that we could have gotten rid of to make the budget work without raising taxes. Yeah, this is a nice goal. I guess I can put it in there. How the mechanics of it would work, well, it'd be nice if we were all angels.
Rebuttal?
Yes, the rebuttal. And any time that we vote to raise taxes, it's no minor decision, and it takes a 2/3 vote to get that accomplished in both houses. We had a situation where the educators in the state were paid at a level of 51st in the nation, and we should not treat our teachers or our preachers as second-class citizens. We need to have them have an adequate wage, and the options in order to do that, we've got to raise additional revenue. And regardless of what folks think, the state of South Dakota is a really well-run fiscal ship. We're one of the few states that has a AAA bond rating, and so our choices were increase property tax, or increase the sales tax and spread the burden amongst a whole lot of people, and that's the reason.
Thank you. Alrighty. Next question.
Okay, I have a very small thing. Gary, I appreciate your work on agriculture tax. Could you please work on transparency, assuming you're elected and I'm not, which I probably shouldn't be making that assumption. I apologies to Kurt Chafee if he's still here. I've worked with him and I've never been able to trace how our ag tax evaluations are done. The law is pretty straightforward, but it looks pretty obfuscated. Can you, on your property, your ag property, can you take your ag statement, your ag evaluation statement, and see where everything comes from and understand it? Because I can't.
The short answer is there's definitely room for improvement. And I truly believe that, and Representative Chafee and I have been working on that and trying to bring some things forward that would help improve. I do not disagree that it would be helpful if we can get that tax assessment sheet to a spot where it's easily understood at first glance. And we have definitely, we've been working on that. We'll continue to work on it, and I agree, there's room for improvement.
As a person who sits on an equalization board, it would be very nice to, when somebody comes and says my assessment's too high, you should be able to say, well, which numbers don't you agree with? It's really straightforward. The law is simple. You folks did a great job, and I appreciate very much that South Dakota has a balanced budget by Constitution. We're going to keep that. There is no way I'm going to break that.
Thank you. Senator Cammack, your final question, candidate Wilsey.
My final question would have to be, and I'm not finding it right here, but in the platform, there is a provision that supports assisted suicide. And I guess I would like to know what your feelings are on that.
Oh, end of life as opposed to right as a subset of right to life. This is not easy. Assisted suicide. really has to be absolutely limited to the patient is terminal, the patient is in pain, the patient is suffering, and the patient either has made previous, preferably written statements that I do not want to extend my life. You know, I don't want to live in pain if there's no way of recovery. In those cases, that's going to come down to privacy between the doctor and the patient.
Thank you. And unless you have any rebuttal to that, we will have you pose your final question.
Oh, I'll give you one. Well, what's the purpose of government? That's a wide open question.
I'm sorry. What is the purpose of government?
What is the purpose of government?
I believe that I've stated that in some of my other answers, but again, very simplistically, the purpose of government is to do for the citizens what they can't do individually by themselves.
Anything else you'd like to further add to that?
Thanks, Gary.
Cool. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for your statesmanship, for your research in both. Audience members, we are now going to take a slight recess. Many of you chose a brightly colored index card and a nifty pen, and you were asked to write questions if you had them. This is the moment where you will bring them up, set them up here on this table, get up and stretch your legs, use the restroom. We will meet back here at 7:50, and then we will resume the final portion of this particular debate. What's that? Oh, thank you. You scared me for a second, Gary.
Who do you want to talk to? Oh,
Maybe just across the street, kick it back.
It either dies or it.
I don't think
Ladies and gentlemen, it's about time to begin. If you come back in and take your seats, and we will close out this session.
Did everybody leave?
I don't know. Maybe. Way less people watching the stream, too. Way less people watching the stream. I had to switch phones.
Oh, would a bunch of them not come back when you switched over?
Yeah, I had like 20 when I was on my phone.
Dang.
Kinda sucks.
Before he comes back.
Yeah.
Thanks for filming this whole thing. Yeah, no problem. If you want to tag out, I can hold it for you for a couple minutes if you would like.
No, that's alright. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, out in the foyer, we would love to begin. So if you'd like to come back in and rejoin the group, that would be fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Anybody else that's not with us will forfeit the pleasure. I'm I'm afraid. Thank you all for the wonderful questions and for putting up with having neon-colored cards. I know that's rather eccentric on my part. So, first of all, I'm glad. Okay, here's one that is specifically addressed to each of you individually, and it's both of you. So, candidate Wilsey, do you consider yourself a liberal or a conservative?
No. The words liberal and conservative have really been run through the ringer. They don't mean what they used to. A conservative today means basically a straight white Republican. A conservative used to mean a person who is against making a change or is highly resistant to change. But that word's just gotten destroyed. And a liberal used to mean a person who is willing to give everyone all the rights they possibly can. But today a liberal means whoever Rush Limbaugh's mad at. I'm a libertarian. I believe in your rights. I believe in minimum government. That's what I am. I'm not a liberal or conservative.
Okay, thank you. Senator Cammack, what do you think of term limits?
I guess I'll address the term limits, and is that on a state issue or state?
It simply says, what do you think of term limits?
I'll address both. On the national level, term limits would have a tendency to hurt smaller states. Our senators, like for instance Senator Thune, he's getting some seniority, and because of that, even though we're a small state, we have a substantial amount of clout. And if we would have term limits on a national basis, I believe it would have a tendency to hurt the smaller states especially. But it also takes away the institutional knowledge. So I don't believe I would be in favor of term limits unless they were fairly extended period of time on the national level. On the state level, I think that term limits, when it first was proposed, I actually voted for it. I think that we need to modify it a bit. Term limits, the way they're written right now in the state government, have a tendency to strengthen the executive branch. And because the way term limits are right now, it's 8 years, and by the time you get that 8 years in, you're just getting into the leadership positions and things like that. And because of that, if you don't have the experience and the institutional knowledge, it has a tendency to strengthen the executive branch.
Okay, thank you. Now, both of you, and so you can have a minute to this, why are teachers more important than any other occupation? No one makes them teach, they chose it. We'll start with you.
If you want to win a nation, you win the children. And there's no one that has a better opportunity of winning the children's hearts and minds, aside from their parents, than teachers. So they're very important part of our social fabric, as well as the economic viability of the country.
Thank you.
Everyone has a role to play in making a great society. Teachers are one very important part of that role. I strongly believe that we need a system that rewards great teachers. I think a private enterprise is a better way to do that than the public school system. Public school system tends to reward having taught a long time. Sometimes that makes you a great teacher. Sometimes it doesn't. We've run across teachers that, frankly, maybe should be doing something else. We've got to have a process for getting them where they belong. I guess that answers the question.
All right, very good. The next question, then, will go very closely with that. How will you address the failing education on a local level?
I'm all for private schools. As I was saying, I finished a thought from a long time ago. I would like to have the school districts be able to give a scholarship to a parent or a child, and have the school district count that child as being enrolled in the school district, even though they're being homeschooled or they're going to private school. And that has to have the caveat with it that there's an agreement that authority and responsibility for that child's education went to the parent. The parent can't come back and sue the school district because they didn't get a good education when the parent took authority and didn't do a good job of educating their child. And at the same time, the parent can't have the school district coming in and telling them how they should raise their child.
10 seconds.
Done, thanks.
Perfect, all right.
First thing, the way the question was stated, it assumes that the educational system has failed, and I don't believe that it has. I believe that it's certainly got room for improvement, and I think that the school systems and the teachers and the administrators, I truly believe that they're constantly trying to improve the education for our young people. But having said that, education is no different than business. You've got to be constantly changing. You've got to be constantly improving, but that does not predetermine that it is a failed system. I don't believe that. I believe that there's certainly room for improvement, and I think it can come from, mostly it's got to come from within.
Okay, thank you.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
kind of rebut or add to that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it isn't necessarily a failed system. I've seen education, public education all over the country, and I've seen great, and I've seen bad, and South Dakota is very good, and it's actually, for dollars, bang for the buck, fabulous.
Thank you. On the topic of local issues, and we will start with you, Gary, since you responded second there. Is there anything you can or would do to help the homeowners and citizens affected by the growing sinkhole in Black Hawk?
My heart goes out to those folks in Black Hawk. They've had just a terrible catastrophe brought on them. And the problem we've got is that we've got a sector of that community that's not able to even live in their homes, and there still is some potential to make some requests on the federal level for FEMA, and I'm not sure exactly where the litigation stands right now, but I know that it can't be brought forward unless there's no litigation pending. So that limits the possibilities of some remedies from the federal government, but it's certainly a serious problem.
Yeah, this is a serious problem. This is unfortunately where litigation has to happen, and it's going to have to sort it out. There's going to be a lot of lawyers that make a lot of money. I pray that those homeowners that have been affected get some restitution.
Perfect, thank you. Ken, this question is specifically addressed to you. It says, how closely do you follow the party platform? Is there anything you do not support?
Okay. What I support more than any specific part of the platform is the core philosophy of the Libertarian Party, and that is the non-aggression principle. We kind of bang everything that we discuss against the non-aggression principle. The non-aggression principle says it is wrong to initiate aggression against another person, and I'll stand by that.
Okay. Thank you. Starting, since this is an equal question, we'll stay with you. Candidate Wilsey, do you believe COVID-19 has been overblown, and do you believe it is a pandemic or a pandemic?
We don't know yet. It's kind of the answer. I've had a lot of people, I've heard a lot of talking heads and such blaming China and say that they did this intentionally. This was a weapon that was released. This was lots of wildness. I know enough about germ warfare to know that this would be a really, really badly designed weapon. I don't think it was intentional. This was just a disease that hit humans. The fact that it came out of China was just the way it happened. So please, please, please don't use this as an excuse to try to start a war with China. We don't want that. I mean, you can't imagine how horrible that would be.
10 seconds.
Yes, there's a lot of hype. Yes, really, people are dying.
Great.
Thank you.
Could you restate the question? I didn't get the very tail.
Absolutely, I'm sorry. Do you believe COVID-19 has been overblown, and do you believe it is a plandemic or a pandemic?
In my mind, there's no doubt that it's a pandemic. As far as being overblown, I think that, again, I think the state of South Dakota's handled this really well. I think other states could take some lessons from us.
Thank you. The next two questions I'm going to actually wrap into one, and we'll start with you, sir. How do you feel about addiction, and how would you help those trying to recover? Also tied in with, how can you help our homeless population? And if you'd like to answer them separately, you are certainly welcome to.
Restate the first question.
Absolutely, and I guess for the sake of clarity, we'll just do this separately. How do you feel about addiction, and how would you help those trying to recover?
Addiction is certainly is like it's been portrayed by a lot of the medical community. It should be dealt with like a disease, and the addiction is something that the individual is going to have to make a decision to move in a different direction. But I believe that we should provide all the help we can to give them the tools to be able to overcome that.
Okay, thank you. And to you, Candidate Wilsey.
Addiction is a medical condition. South Dakota treats it as a legal condition. We incarcerate per capita more than anybody else in the country, and the country more than anybody else in history. And a big chunk of that is drug use and the drug war. We've got to turn the drug war from an excuse to fund police and intrude into your affairs into making it treated as a medical condition. Addiction is a damn tough thing to work through, whether it's addicted to caffeine or heroin. This is a tough thing to work through. We need to help these people. I think there's a big role for churches and private institutions to help people. I think we need to back away from having the police being doing it.
Okay, thank you. And piggybacking on that, how can you help our homeless population?
Okay. This is tangentially related. Well, actually, it's not tangentially related. One of the things we need to do here is get rid of minimum wage. Minimum wage laws hurt the most difficult to employ people, and a lot of homeless folks fall into that category of difficult to employ. If we get rid of the minimum wage laws, we can create opportunity for people to start working. Particularly on our reservations, we have some really serious problems with people with no job experience can't find a job. If we get rid of our minimum wage laws, we can provide opportunity for those people to get some experience and start moving into a more stable life.
Thank you. Finally, from our event organizer, can you both say something nice about each other? And let's see, you get to respond last, I believe you get to go first.
Gary, thank you for your service. I really appreciate what you did with ag taxes. And I love shopping at your store.
Well, thank you. I've got employees that have kids that need new shoes, so I appreciate that. I would say that this, anytime that you have the opportunity to have an exchange of ideas with someone, and especially if you don't necessarily feel like you agree with them, as long as you can have that exchange, it serves to open up the avenues for further discussions, but it also gives you a better perspective of their perspective on life. So I appreciate that.
Perfect. We will now move into the closing statements. Senator Cammack, since you were the last to go in opening statements, you get to be the first to go now. You have 5 minutes for any closing statement you wish to leave with us.
Well, first off, again, I'd like to thank everyone who has come out this evening, and I have a clear understanding that the mind can only absorb what the butt can endure, so I think we've got to that point, and I really appreciate everyone being here. The thing that I want to leave folks with is that South Dakota is a really well-run state. It was stated early that we've got this migration of people moving in here, and it's not by accident. I've talked to several of them, and the one individual came here from Louisiana, is a 30-year veteran of the Marine Corps, and he just moved here to Rapid City. He said his wife is a spreadsheet crazy person, and they said him and his wife laid out 10 criteria that they wanted. When they retired from the military, what they wanted of a place to live, and some of them included, quality life and outdoor experience and that sort of thing, but it also included a lot of other things, and he said South Dakota came to the top on all 10 criteria, so there was no doubt in their mind why they're moving here. But South Dakota, you just go down the list. We've got no corporate income tax, we've got no business inventory tax, we've got no franchise or capital stock tax, we've got no personal income tax, we've got no estate or inheritance tax. Our unemployment insurance is 1.09. That means that we're amongst the 10 lowest as far as rates for unemployment insurance. The state sales tax, even though we did raise it 0.5% for the teachers, it's amongst the lowest in the United States right now. South Dakota, because of all these reasons, South Dakota is a net migration state. We're number 2 from third-party analysis. We're number 2 most friendly business state in the nation. We've got our private GDP has grown at a rate faster. It's the 6th highest in the U.S. We've grown. The GDP has grown 136%, over 136% private GDP since the year 2000, in the last 20 years. We've got a AAA bond rating for the state of South Dakota. The state doesn't use that, but it really works nicely for the municipalities and universities. It keeps that cost of money so low, and they can do projects and finance them over a period of time, so the AAA bond rating is just huge. We've got, as far as the business and labor force, we're the 6th lowest bankruptcy state in the nation. We have the 2nd best credit rating score as an aggregate of the whole United States. And we're the 2nd best in business efficiency in the state. We do not leave here South Dakota without a balanced budget. And so we've got a lot. There's always, like I said earlier, you need to be constantly improving. And having said that, there's always room for improvement. But South Dakota is a really, really well-run place.
Thank you, Senator Cammack. Candidate Wilsey.
Thank you all for coming out here. Appreciate your patience with my inexperience in public speaking. You're going to go vote, please. I appreciate that. You've got a choice here. We have a lot of similarities, Gary and I. We're both husbands and fathers. We're both ranchers. We're both business owners. There's some differences. Gary's lived in the same part of Meade County all his life. I've lived all over the place and exposed to all sorts of crazy people. Apologies. There's an old saying that politicians are like diapers. They need to be changed occasionally, and for the exact same reason. Gary doesn't necessarily fall into that category, but if you want
things to say exactly the same without voting for the same person. If you see anything needs change, you're gonna have to vote for somebody that's maybe a little different. South Dakota is a very well-run place. There's room for improvement. I'll work to protect your freedom and let you keep your property, and thank you for your time.
Thank you both. That concludes our debate. We'll now move into the forum portion, but you are released. Thank you.
I do want to take a minute to thank our moderator. I think she did an excellent job. I'd like to have a round of applause for her also.
And her job's not quite over yet. Thank you for everybody who's still with us. That's partially my fault. I organized the debate and I structured it, and judging by half of the people that have left, I understand that maybe it was a little too long. That being said, I'd like to introduce Melissa Mentele and Terri Jorgensen to take the stage and get ready. The time is currently 8:15. At 8:20, I would like to begin, and we're going to give them both equal time to discuss the issues, with Chastity remaining as the moderator. Terri is going to be taking the position to inform you about marijuana legalization and her views on it. Melissa is going to be doing the same. They're going to have 3 equal 5-minute sessions, and then after that we will be open to everybody that's left here to ask questions of both of them. Thank you.
So when I get done talking and everything, go to the open session, I'm gonna want my phone back, because all my research is on my phone. So, how that, let me see how that works. Actually,
More like an interrogation. Why do you think that's not facing the lights? Oh my goodness.
If I knew how to turn them down.
That's so bright.
Oh, damn, yeah. I could probably figure it out, but...
I'm not really sure how to get up there.
All right, ladies, let's begin. Have fun. If I accidentally address you as sir, I apologize. All right. Terri, we are going to begin with you. You have 5 minutes to introduce what you would like for us for your first round of 5. Okay.
Hi, I'm Terri Jorgensen. I'm here today as a private citizen, and I'm urging a no vote on the marijuana ballot measures. And the first one, of course, is the Constitutional Amendment A. The second is the Initiated Measure 26. I'm urging a no vote for the following reasons. The first is that the South Dakota State Medical Association is opposing both marijuana ballot measures, and they're citing that the drug is hazardous, and I believe that is true, and I have the documentation to prove that, and carries safety risks by circumventing the FDA. I do want to start this and just say, just so you know, when this whole thing started, I was kind of like, yeah, marijuana, everything that I've kind of heard about it it's not that big a deal. But as I rolled up my sleeves and started doing the research, I came to find out that is not true. And there's overwhelming research to show that it is a very dangerous drug. In fact, decades of research showing that it can lead to psychosis and violence. In fact, in Canada, where this is legal across the board, they actually have a warning to that effect. You can go online and check out everything I'm saying in 2018. They actually have a warning label that says if you use marijuana that it could lead to psychosis. So just so you're aware of that. And this isn't your grandparents' marijuana, I know. I'm not saying your grandparents used it or didn't, but I'm just saying that in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even in the early 90s, the THC levels for marijuana was less than, usually it was about 2%, and it was all coming from Mexico. And so if you're smoking it, you're burning off about half of the THC. So that's not the case anymore. We're talking about the average in Colorado, it's about 17%. And the high levels of THC really do make a difference. And the other big thing that's going on right now is edibles. And you can have edibles that have 90% THC. Yes, I do have that data as well. And because it's being processed through your liver, you can actually have a heightened psycho experience. I'm definitely not an expert in edibles other than what I've read, but you can get a higher high if you're doing edibles, and it doesn't kick in until later. So there's a lot of concerns, safety concerns with people driving, with long-term health effects with marijuana. A couple of things, the initiated measure that I'm really concerned about was already mentioned, but in section 96, and I do want to point out, if you haven't read it, this is the initiated measures, and there's 26 pages. Thank you. Oh, I still have 1 minute? So anyway, I just want to say, I'm going to go through and show that initiated ballot measure in section 96 of the 26 pages, it actually says that children or students can bring medical marijuana into the schools. So I think that's very important for you to be aware of. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for clarification, I'll give you guys at the 1 minute mark, and then I'll tell you when it's time. Absolutely. Ms. Melissa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Metley. I am the Executive Director of New Approach South Dakota. Thankfully, I am an expert in my field. I'm actually one of the top 8 women in the nation on cannabis policy. So I've been doing this a really long time. And I do want to address a few things. So section 96, we tell people the bill for South Dakota initiative measure 26 was written by patients for patients. Section 96 is actually called Jack's Law, and it originated in the state of Colorado for a little boy named Jack, who went to school, and due to his need for cannabinoids during classroom time, he had to be removed from school grounds, and he was a disabled child. So if you work with disabled children, you understand that once you are in the classroom in the morning and have started to integrate, it is very hard to take a disabled child out of a classroom, bring them back in, and reintegrate them into the classroom environment. So it does not mean that children will bring medical marijuana to school. What it does mean is that school nurses have the ability to give tinctures to children. This law actually was supported by the Department of Education here in South Dakota. They came out when it was first written and said that they would make this a seamless transition because they understood the need for it. Gives me a little bit of a palpitations because I think of all the kids that I work with, and using that as a target I find disgusting, but that's just me. When we get into psychosis, so I've read actually some of your Facebook posts, and I do understand that you're working off of Alex Berenson's book. Am I correct with that?
I actually have quite a few studies that are beyond that.
Okay. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So I do want to say this. Alex Berenson wrote a really horrible book in 2019 that has been kind of spoofed all over the internet. This gentleman is not a scientist. He is not a physician. He has no medical background. This man is a fiction writer. what this man did was he wrote a very polarizing book. This book was used to gain attention and to profit off of. I'm actually holding a white paper here that was written by the Drug Policy Alliance. There's copies of it out in the foyer. And this white paper was actually written and added to by the physicians that he misquotes in his book. So one of the big things is the Psychosis Claim. So America, the United States, has the highest rates of marijuana use across the globe. It also has the lowest estimated prevalence of schizophrenia and related psychotic disorders than the global average. So I do want to point that out. That is due to changes in how mental illness is diagnosed and the DSM-5 coding on mental illness in the US. There are lots of holes in the Berenson data, and I do, if anybody wants a copy, I do have several with me. The reason that our bill is so long is not because each part of that is language. What it is a summary, a framework of rules that will be written by the Legislative Research Council Board. So what you are looking at when you see 25 pages is 25 pages of things that need to be addressed in the state. It does not have a bunch of unchangeable language. What it has is a lot of suggestions for the state to work on. And with the way that it is structured, the LRC will put together a board of stakeholders, including the DCI, Department of Public Safety, the Attorney General's Office, physicians, patients, and we will have a conversation from November until this bill is implemented in July, making those rules. Those rules will be set for South Dakota. Those rules will be patient-friendly, and those rules will provide access to people who desperately need it in our state. Sorry, I get a little bit frustrated when we have to do things like this. I do want to say this also. This morning, I presented to Ollie alongside the South Dakota Medical Association. What you may not be aware of is that the South Dakota Medical Association Board has received a request from their members to reconsider their position on this. That means that this policy and this stance that they have taken is not set in stone, and that could change. And I'm done.
Thank you. Terri, it is now back to you. You have 5 minutes.
Okay, can we do some back and forth? Because
Absolutely.
I definitely have some questions. So when you talk about section 96 and you say this was done for a child, can you tell me, was it for epilepsy? Is that what we're talking about?
Jack was severely disabled, and one part of that was epilepsy.
Okay, so you are familiar then that there has been a CBD oil that was approved in 2018 for epilepsy, for 2 rare forms of epilepsy.
Would that be Epidiolex?
Yes.
Yes, I'm very aware of that. I actually worked on that, the policy when GW Pharmaceuticals tried to monopolize the CBD market. I worked on preventing that in 25 states.
Okay, and so you are also aware that a lot of the CBD oils that are on the market, that you do not know what the potency is?
That is incorrect. Every CBD product on the market has comprehensive testing. They cannot be sold in any store without that.
I'm going to challenge that, but we can talk more about that later. So you're saying that if we were to go to the store right now and pull off a CBD oil, that we would know what the potency is, that it would. Okay, I would challenge.
Absolutely.
Okay,
You can buy gas station CBD that is the exact same product as Epidiolex. The only difference is that it has sucralose sugar syrup, which is why we see elevated liver enzymes in children that take Epidiolex. That's why children are taken off of that and put back onto over-the-counter CBD products, because it has so many problems with their liver.
So I have seen studies where they've taken CBD oil off of the shelves and they tested it, and it has not had what it said it was going to have. But that's okay, we'll just go on. So then, I understand what you're saying then about the book. I'm not going to bring up the book, but how about the statement of concern that came out of clinicians and scientists in Massachusetts, the May 2019 study that said that science is clear, marijuana, specifically the psychoactive chemical, has the potential to do significant harm to public health. There is a lack of public awareness about these potential dangers. Given that the tobacco industry has spent billions to partner with Juul and a marijuana company, we expect a significant increase in the use of high THC vapes. Regulatory failures in the case of the marijuana industry, like tobacco, opioids, and vape devices, is likely unless there is a prioritized focus on public health. This is coming from, and I mean, these are doctors, PhDs, Harvard Medical School.
Okay. It's interesting that you talk about research, considering that it is a Schedule I drug, so research is actually not permitted in the United States.
I would also like to challenge you on that, because the University of Mississippi is the only facility in the United States which has done 50 years of research on marijuana. So that is not, you're right.
Facility. There are over 40,000 studies that have been done on the efficacy and safety of cannabis out of the University of Israel. That data is available online. You can look at the Dr. Raphael Meshulam. He is one of the leading experts in cannabis research in the world.
And Lancet has also done studies on marijuana since the 1980s. In fact, one of the earliest studies was in 1987. 45,000 recruits were,
No, you got 1 minute left in this segment.
So I mean, we can go back and forth all day on those different studies, but there is actually a warning in Colorado as well. There's a warning in Canada as well. There's this warning that's coming out of Massachusetts that lists all these different doctors who have looked at it, and they're all saying the same thing, that there is a link to the high THC and psychosis.
Do you understand what THC is used for? Like, it's the actual medical use of it, and why THC concentrations are so high in some products? Do you understand that? It's used for cancer patients who are suffering from severe, debilitating pain. So that is what it is for.
So you realize there was a 2014 study that was done for physicians, for surgeons, that basically said that people who have long-term use of marijuana actually have a lower threshold for pain, so they need more pain meds? You're aware of that, right?
I am aware that Colin did ask that if you were going to cite sources, you did have to provide them to all of us. So my sources are here, and they're sitting out on the table. I've not had a chance to read yours.
Okay, fair enough.
We're at time, so now, Mrs. Metley, you are going to then start with your round 2 discussion.
All right. So we get into this discussion about psychoses, and a lot of the data out there is not accurate. In fact, the study that is mostly quoted by people that are using Alex Berenson's book as a resource for it. One of the biggest issues with it is that he attributes cause as an association. So what it is so I'm just going to read this to you. This is actually the white paper that is out there. And this was written by the physicians whose data he cherry-picked for his book. So Berenson attributes cause to an association between marijuana and schizophrenia. For example, he argues that marijuana use has caused an increase in psychosis, including schizophrenia, in the United States, and that marijuana legalization will increase rates of both psychosis and schizophrenia in the next generation. See the book's introduction. Though the U.S. has the highest rates of marijuana use across the globe, it has a lower estimated prevalence of schizophrenia-related psychosis disorders, which I covered earlier. It goes on to say that Berenson blatantly misrepresents the findings of the National Academy of Sciences report on the health effects of cannabis, and maliciously argues that marijuana can cause mental illness and violence, when in fact the report did not reach that conclusion. It is impossible to attribute one cause to the onset of mental illness. Mental illness is complex and impacted by multiple factors such as social determinants, environmental factors, and genetics. So I think it's really important that we do not pin marijuana and schizophrenia into the same thing, because it is not. It has not been proven. There have been correlations between heavy marijuana users, but that's not what we're talking about here. I'm here because I represent an organization that advocates for medical marijuana for children and adults with severe catastrophic illnesses. What you are doing is trying to debunk the marijuana industry as a whole. And I understand that. There are lots of people out there like you. But what you're not looking at is there are mothers in this room of disabled children. There are cancer patients. There are people that this very much personally affects, and your words are not true. The data you are using is not true, and that is sad. It's sad that you would come up here to do this, and that we again have to do this tomorrow. So I do want to say, for all the patients in the room, I am so sorry that you all have to listen to this, because this is very, very disheartening.
Okay, so that's an emotional appeal, and I appreciate that, because I also feel for children, and I feel for the studies that I've looked at and the research I've seen that shows marijuana use and the effect on the developing brain. But I want to move on.
Oh, but let me address that.
Well, it's my time, right?
I still have time.
Oh,
She
go ahead.
has 1 minute.
I do have a minute. So we went rounds with the South Dakota Medical Association on this. So you are stating that marijuana has detrimental effects on the young brain. But a few rounds ago, you were actively promoting a product that was specifically made for children. So this is where we have a serious conundrum that our industry does not understand. How can you advocate for a pharmaceutical that does the exact same thing that the medicine we make does? Is it because you feel that pharmaceutical companies are better at this, or that they deserve to make $8,000 a month for a child's dosage? Because that's what they charge. Epidiolex is $8,000 a month for a child. Our products on the open regulated cannabis industry cost $150. Both are targeted for children. Both have the same effects. So using the youth brain while we are sitting here talking about children who need access when there are products out there for children doesn't really make sense to most of us.
So we're not actually disagreeing on the CBD, correct?
I disagree that
No,
Epidiolex is a superior product.
No, what I'm saying is CBD is legal in South Dakota
Yes.
as of 2020.
As of, we worked on that bill for 2 years. So
Okay, so that's legal, right? Okay, so we're not disagreeing on that.
It is now your time, so
Okay,
you
thank you. All right, so my only point is that if people are going to go out and get CBD, they need to be aware that they may not be getting the potency they think they're getting. From everything I've looked at, from studies where you can just, but that, we're going to let that one go because it's legal. You can go ahead and go out and get CBD right now, okay? My concern is, actually what I want to do is I want to move on. I want to move on to the marijuana tax revenues. And what I want to talk about is, in Colorado, the tax revenues have fallen short. This is from Democratic Governor Hickenlooper in 2018. We get $200 million a year in tax revenues for marijuana, which you know we're a $30 billion budget. So it's a drop in the bucket. It's not going to pay for early childhood education or solve any big social ills. So this big windfall that everyone keeps talking about from the marijuana industry, according to Centennial Institute 2018, $4.50 is the cost for each dollar brought in by marijuana tax revenues in Colorado. Costs such as law enforcement, driving deaths, car crash, workforce issues, and mental health issues. Tax revenues account for less than 1% of state revenues in Alaska, California, Oregon, and Washington, and Colorado. Politico and Pew Trust 2019. So I just want to talk a little bit about the revenues because everyone thinks it's going to be a windfall. Do you have any comments on that?
how much do you think that the state of Colorado got for tax revenue that was actually used by the state? What's the percentage?
According to the study I looked at, it was 1%, less than 1%.
It's actually 2%.
All right,
Do you know what the number is on that 2%?
Go ahead.
Do you know what the number is? 2% sounds really low, but do you know what the end number of the 2% was?
All right, what was it?
$20 million. So $20 million from the cannabis industry went to the state of Colorado for all of the things that you listed. And that was over and above all of the expenses that it costs to run the program in that state. That is more than a drop in the bucket. That is a significant amount of money for their state. In South Dakota, we are on track to bring in $250 million in tax revenue over 10 years.
And those are projected, obviously, we don't know what
That
it's gonna be.
projection was done by the state of South Dakota through their fiscal note. So that came from the state.
Right, no, I understand that, but it's still a projection, I understand that. But there's always costs associated, that's why law enforcement, the Pennington sheriff came out against it, as I'm sure you're aware. Out against this, the legalization.
Did you say the Pennington County Sheriff? Is that
Yes.
what you said?
Mhm.
You are aware that it is against campaign finance laws for them to take any public stance on this issue? So they, by law, cannot come out and take any stance.
Okay, well, it was an editorial in the paper.
It was an editorial.
You're right,
on
yes, thank
January
you,
2.
thank you. I do appreciate you correcting me, I understand what you're saying. He came out as a private citizen expressing his view. He is a law enforcement officer, but he did express his private views. Thank you.
So I do want to actually address your Centennial
Hi,
Institute.
Terri still has a minute and a half. Hold on just a second.
Okay.
I want to talk about medical, out-of-state medical cards, because the way that it's set up now, if you're in another state and you can get a medical card, you can come into South Dakota and you can use marijuana any way that you want. And so it takes away a lot of control from our legislators and from South Dakotans as far as how we're going to put the boundaries around medical marijuana use.
Minutes.
Actually, that reciprocity was something that was suggested by the legislature to increase tourism, because we have lost so many people coming to Sturgis due to our felony cannabis laws. So allowing Sturgis bikers and other tourists to bring their card in from another state and be able to have their medicine while they're in South Dakota was something that was very, very highly recommended by legislators.
And you're at time, so if you'd like to take your final 5 minutes, then we will move into public forum.
I really don't know where to start. I'm not used to having to go back and forth with somebody that is so anti-cannabis. It's really never happened. Even the South Dakota Medical Association are fantastic conversationalists on this subject. They know a lot, and we've shared a lot of information, lots of great conversations. So I do want to address just a couple things. So the Centennial study, so the myth is for every dollar gained in tax revenue, Coloradoans spent approximately $4.50 to mitigate the effects of legalization. Fact, the Centennial Institute study cited for this claim has been thoroughly debunked for a number of reasons. It incorrectly claims that marijuana legalization has created costs as a result of high school dropouts. According to the Colorado Department of Education, the state's dropout rate was 2.3% in 2016 and 2017, and 2% in 2018 and 2019. According to a report from the U.S. Department of Education earlier this year, the percentage of high school dropouts among persons 16 to 24-year-olds in Colorado is not measurably different from the national average. That's just one of the things from the Centennial study. There's no credibility to that report, and it was deemed laughable by a reporter who analyzed it. If legalization was such a bad deal, it's hard to imagine why 71% of Coloradoans in a 2020 poll regarded the policy as a success. So in your research, what did you find for rates on support in states that have legalized? I guess I'm just curious.
I don't have that data.
Okay, well I do. So states with recreational marijuana laws view the legislation as a success. So today about a quarter, 26% of Coloradans say the state level recreational cannabis laws have been a success. Another 45% say they've been more of a success than a failure. Fewer than 1 in 5 believe the laws have been more of a failure. We can go into basically every state that has legalized. So 2/3 of those in Oregon, 69%, Massachusetts, 67%, believe that the laws have been a success. That remains the majority opinion among those who live in Washington, 65%, Nevada, 64%, California, 59%, Illinois, 59%, Michigan, 56%. Michigan and Illinois are the only Midwestern states with legal recreational marijuana, and they are the most recent additions to the list. Michigan was the 10th state to legalize, so every single state that has legalized, whether it be for medical or for adult use, has deemed it a success. Not one single state has ever repealed legalization. There's never been a true effort to turn back the clock on this, because it works. And I understand it's probably scary for you, or scary for others that have no education in this subject, but it's not scary. And what we're going to do in November is help a lot of patients in the state. And so I will yield my time. I really don't have much else.
Okay, and I would say that, first of all, you don't know me, you don't know what my education is, you don't know what my experience is. I started out thinking it wasn't a big deal, but as I did look into it, I did become more concerned. I did become more concerned as I looked at the data and the health downside of this. And I have concerns about local control. I have concerns about the warning labels that are on in Canada, the warning labels that they put out.
Well, we're in South Dakota, not Canada.
I understand that. And I'm concerned about the warning labels they put out in Colorado, which is a neighbor. I went to the Colorado website and looked at their warning labels. So I understand we're in South Dakota, and South Dakota is an amazing place to live. And South Dakotans are very compassionate people. We do care about people, and we care about our youth. And to say that you don't, that what I hear from you is everything's wonderful and great when it comes to marijuana. So I'm confused. I mean, you're saying there's no downside at all
There are plenty of downsides, but I spent 22 years in nursing, caring for the most sickest patients out there. I worked in hospice. I took care of dying individuals. I have a child with a seizure disorder. I was retired from nursing in 2012 from a severe chronic pain injury. My personal experience is different. Cannabis works. It has worked for me. It has worked for my family. It works for patients. And that is the way I look at it. There are lots of downsides to every issue. We have legalized alcohol. I wear the ashes of my best friend around my neck who was killed 2 years ago in a drunk driving accident. Do we turn back the clock on alcohol legalization? No, we don't. We mitigate the risks, and we take marked steps forward to ensure that we are safe, and that the residents of South Dakota make good choices, and that our law enforcement enforces the laws that are written the way that they are written. And is there going to be the person that doesn't follow the rules? Absolutely. If I sat here and said every single person is going to follow the rules on all of this, it's going to be happy, happy, joy, joy, Pollyanna time, it's not. There is going to be some jerk that screws it up. There's going to be somebody that makes the news. But that one person does not change the fact that in November, we have the ability to change 1,500 people's lives. 1,500 people that I personally know of through doing 6 years of advocacy and education in the state. So, do I think the risks outweigh the benefit? Yeah, I absolutely do. I do. But do I think that people will screw up and make mistakes and do dumb things? I absolutely do. I've done it in every state. But I have faith in our law enforcement. I have faith in our physicians. I have faith in our legislator. And I have faith in our state to ensure that we are good people and we will make the best choices for our family. We will exercise our personal responsibility and freedom, and we will make this work. And I'm sorry if you don't agree.
Yeah, and I don't agree. I actually, I'm concerned we're going to become a medical marijuana sanctuary state, which is what's going to happen if we pass this in November, because it's still illegal on the federal level, and so it hampers our law enforcement. Our law enforcement will not be able to help federal law enforcement. I mean, that's part of it as well. There's all
to anyways because the federal government defunded them from operating in medically legal states. So they don't investigate in medical states.
Ladies, we have 1 minute and then we'll move into the public forum, so use your minute well.
And I find it ironic, I don't know anybody that would come to South Dakota as a sanctuary medical marijuana state. There are 33 other states with beautiful climates that are warm all year round, that have the ocean, and have a million amazing things. South Dakotans, we're tough stock. We are here because we can handle the winter. We can handle the humidity. We can handle the 100-degree heat. People come to our state to visit and leave. Most people are not going to come here because we have medical marijuana. I'm sorry, I absolutely disagree on that.
Well, and that wasn't my point. My point wasn't the fact whether people were coming or not because of the medical marijuana. My point was that we were putting law enforcement and we were putting even our schools in a situation where they will be violating federal law. That's my point. I have to ignore.
And actually, we are done, ladies, so we are going to open it up to public forum. Ladies and gentlemen, you still have your brightly colored cards. That is how we are going to address questions so that they are well thought out. We don't do any gotcha questions. Nothing is made to trip anybody up, and yet everything is made to further a intellectual conversation. So please we will give you about 2 minutes for you to write those cards, bring them up, and then we will address them. If you want them sent to one side or the other, please help the moderator out and address them appropriately. Thank you. I'll be gracious and do 3.
Nothing in the basket, is there? There's nothing in that basket, is there?
I don't think so.
I'm so flustered.
Come comment section's really turned into the Devin Saxon show. He heard me say that. Oops. In here. Good. Oh God, don't block Devin.
All right, if there are no further questions to be asked, or I'm sure there are, but if I don't get any more awesome colored cards, oh my goodness. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kings have it. Thank you, sir. All right, ladies. I am going to try to organize these. I am going to hit, it's you guys' choice. Would you rather do the ones that are specifically addressed first or the ones that are addressed to both of you first? All right, let's hit them both. All right, in 2018, 1 in 10 arrests in South Dakota were for marijuana possession. 65% of those arrests were adults under the age of 25. Do you think legalization will lift the burden on law enforcement and allow police to spend time on violent crimes instead? And since Terri opened up, we will allow Melissa to take it from there.
Absolutely. So that study is actually what we call the Getman study around our team. It was a really amazing study where we had a researcher from Shenandoah University take a look at all of the NC, I'm going to say it wrong, but all of the federal data and local data from arrests throughout the state. What the 10% also showed is that there's a huge racial disparity there. We put our Native American citizens and our Black and people of color in jail at a much higher rate. That study and the layers that were revealed to us when it came out was pretty astonishing. So what we are going to do when we pass this in November is take a huge burden off of law enforcement. We currently have one of the highest states of overdose deaths from opioids and heroin and methamphetamine in the U.S. And this will give them the opportunity to focus on true crimes, crimes that destroy families, especially when we are talking about methamphetamine in the state of South Dakota. It is such a here and it has destroyed so many lives. And I think it's time that South Dakota really spend some time on it. And we stop incarcerating adults for small amounts of marijuana.
Thank you, and Ms. Terri.
I guess we're in agreement on a lot of this. I do have an issue with of putting people who have an addiction problem or who are struggling with that. I do have an issue with incarceration and the way we're handling some of that.
South Dakota is one of the only states in the nation that has a felony ingestion law. Do you know how many youth's lives we ruin every year with that? We take away the ability for them to get federal financial aid. So we are taking bright, young minds who have made a mistake, and we are taking them out of the ability to go to college.
Yeah, and I would say, that's definitely an area that we can probably agree on.
Thank you, ladies. And then, just for the sake of clarity, we will follow the same format as in the earlier debates. So unless there's been a personal attack, after each of you has responded, you'll get your 2 minutes, but then you don't get to tack on anything else unless there's been an attack and you deserve a rebuttal. Just for clarity's sake. Alrighty, what are some conditions, this one will go to you, Terri. First, what are some conditions that are treated with miracle marijuana, and why is marijuana better than other treatments?
That probably is.
That would not be one.
It was not specifically addressed to, so it was an open one. So if you'd like to shoot it across the aisle, you're certainly welcome to.
Okay. So the question is, what can be treated with marijuana, and
what are some conditions that are treated with medical marijuana, and not miracle marijuana?
Okay. What are
I must confess graders, fourth graders, third graders, second graders, I would make them rewrite somebody else's handwriting.
Okay, so in 1996, California passed compassionate use. And it was based on AIDS patients. And the reason they did that is they wanted to use marijuana for that. And what they have found is that there's other therapeutics and other things that really help so much more than that and work much better. And when I went out and looked at Colorado and the medical marijuana cards, I noticed there wasn't any for AIDS. But of course, it's legalized all the way across the board, so that doesn't tell me much. You know, as I'm looking at it, I know I have to connect the dots. I think there's probably some really great uses for CBD, definitely for CBD oil. Yeah.
All right, Lindsay.
Absolutely. So many of you have seen Larry Smith's video on YouTube, whether it's YouTube, Facebook. Larry Smith was a former police officer and owner of a bakery in Vermillion, South Dakota. He had Parkinson's disease, and he did a documentary called Live with Larry, which was a beautiful story of this man who fought valiantly to continue to be a biker. Not a biker, but like a pedalist biker, recumbent biker. Well, he fought through Parkinson's disease. His wife Betty and I have gotten to know each other over the years, and she shared a lot of Larry's story with us. And when you watch the video of him using medical marijuana and how the oral movements of his arms go away, and he's able to lay still and to have a conversation and to be part of his life. He has since passed away just a few months ago, which is incredibly sad. And we send condolences to his family, we did when it happened, but what he showed America and the people across this nation is that medical marijuana is not just for things like glaucoma and seizures and cancer patients, but there are very real conditions that can give severe quality of life back. And when we look at cannabis use, we look at, I'm sorry, but I get a little emotional when I talk about this. I have seen with my own two eyes children go years without seizures, not from CBD oil, from extended cannabinoid use. When we look at children that have control of seizures, it is not from CBD oil, it is from using additional cannabinoids, whether it be THC, THCV, CBDV, CBA, CBN. What you and many others don't understand is that this is not about THC. This is about additional cannabinoid use.
Thank you. All right. This next one, and we'll go to you first, says, I know several people who are dying of their medication. What are your thoughts on medical refugees?
I know too many of them. I think that's probably the biggest thing to say is when I first started advocating in South Dakota 6 years ago, right after Colorado legalized, we used to be able to move patients from our state and move them to Colorado and help them get treatment or housing or whatnot. We were able to do all of these things, and when Colorado became the first state to recreationally legalize, it destroyed medical for so many of us that were helping patients. And I have a lot of friends that are refugees that lived in Colorado, and since then we have passed laws in their states and they've been able to move home. My friend Wendy and her son Colton Turner, who is the first child in the U.S. to be cured, medically cured of Crohn's disease, was a good friend of mine in Colorado. They have since moved home to Illinois now that they have a legalization law. The beauty of medical refugees is watching them go home to their own state as they pass laws there.
Thank you. Same question to you.
You know, this is a tough issue when we start talking about personal stories, and I understand that because as South Dakotans, we're all compassionate. We all really do care, and I believe in that even though we're on both sides of this issue, it's because we really do care about our kids. We care about our citizens, but I think when we make marijuana sound like there is no downside, that we are disregarding large body of evidence that show that there can be negative effects. And my concern is that we don't talk about the harm that's caused by this high THC levels that we're seeing today. And I'm not talking about Berenson's book. I mean, this is from clinicians and scientists in Massachusetts. They're the ones. These are from people in Harvard. This is Cambridge. This is Lancet. These are reputable sources. And
As
so,
I stated at the beginning, Colin did ask that we bring our sightings to share.
and I was not ever, Colin, you're back there. You can verify I was never asked that.
I said to bring all of our information with us ahead of the debate, if you were gonna quote it.
It has to be cited to be fact checked. Mine is all sitting in the foyer for everybody's review.
I will be more than happy to have this for you tomorrow.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to the South Dakota is for personal freedom. Why can't people have the freedom to choose recreational in this everything?
Well, definitely Libertarian that's asked this question. And I appreciate that. I mean, I understand personal responsibility. I understand personal freedom. My concern is everything I'm seeing with marijuana, what I'm reading, what I'm looking at with a high THC, with what I'm seeing is I'm very concerned about our children, and making it seem like a very dangerous drug is acceptable, that there's nothing wrong with it. And especially in section 96 when it says that they'll be able to bring it into school. And I am concerned about it. Okay. I'm a Republican too, so.
As stated before, section 96 does not allow children to bring marijuana into school. It allows parents with a collaborative effort with the school nurse and school administration to provide medicine at school. Just like when I sent my daughter to school with diazepam suppositories for seizures. So when my daughter would have a seizure at school, they would pull her pants down and give her a rectal diazepam. What we are doing is giving parents the option to not have to send a rescue into school, but to be able to send the cannabinoids that children are on, whether that be a patch, just like a pain patch, that gives a continuous delivery of cannabinoids, or it's a tincture that the school nurse puts under their tongue. So please, this is not about children bringing marijuana to school. This is about parents collaborating with the school system to ensure that this is a seamless transition, which the South Dakota Department of Education has already publicly said that they would do.
And I appreciate your clarification. You're right. I did say that
It's very
incorrectly.
polarizing when you say that.
Yes, and I accept that criticism because I do want to be accurate, and so I appreciate you pointing that out.
Okay, started with you this time then, ma'am. Why not, or did I just do that backwards? Help me out, ladies. I'm gonna give it to you first.
Okay.
Why not open more jobs for South Dakota?
This is a great question. I obviously agree in opening more jobs for South Dakota, but I think a lot of people don't understand that when we talk about job creation in South Dakota, this is not about dispensary workers. What we will do in the first 5 years of legalization is create so many skilled opportunities for HVAC, construction, realty, electricians, you name it. If somebody builds something, we need them. So we will be giving jobs to every skilled trade person in the state because we have to build facilities. We have to build structures and grow operations, which are closed indoor locked facilities. So the job creation just on the front end of building out this program is amazing. And then we get into jobs that are in dispensaries or in cultivation facilities that teach people a new trade. I do want to say this, next week I have a tour that I'm giving to a university here in the state of South Dakota that is looking at adding a cultivation program to their curriculum. So I'm taking their curriculum manager on a tour of a grow facility we have up in the state of South Dakota. It's not operational, but it is built. So,
CT.
Well, jobs, right? Yeah, I'm all for jobs, but I'm also for local control, and I am concerned with Section 59 of the initiated measure that says no local government may prohibit a marijuana dispensary either expressly or through the enactment of an ordinance that makes the operation of the dispensary impractical in the jurisdiction. So,
do you understand what that means? Or why that's written like that? Or do you just see it as something that
Hold on to that thought for just a second. We'll let her finish her thoughts. She does have 2 minutes to finish hers, and then we'll allow you the 1 minute rebuttal if you wish.
So my reading of this and my concern is this going to affect local government if they want to prohibit a dispensary in their town?
Do you answer?
I think
Sure.
so.
Okay, so this is a great question. So it does not limit local control. What it does is it ensures that, I guess if you live in South Dakota, you've obviously looked at a map of South Dakota. So we have 3 really distinct populated areas in the state, and then we have a whole lot of spread out. So I live in Emory, which is Hanson County. What it is it's to ensure that patients who live by me, or patients who live by Liz up in Spearfish, or our friends in Vail, or on the other side of Pine Ridge Reservation, also have the ability to access medicine. Does that mean that in every single community there will be a dispensary? Absolutely not. It just means that if it looks like there should be, and there are patients there that can support it, and there is a need that communities cannot ban it.
10 seconds.
What we've seen in California is dry counties, where patients have to travel hundreds of miles to access medicine, and we did not want to do that, especially as spread out as we are in South Dakota.
Thank you.
So it does take away local control then, because if you do, basically your community cannot opt out of having a dispensary.
Read the last sentence of that again.
Well, you just said that.
Yep, but it is to make it so patients have access to medicine. Does it mean that we're going to put a dispensary in 440 population communities? Absolutely not. But there may be a community there where there's, look it out here, where there are so many small communities. Yes, there may be one. But this all is a collaborative conversation. We don't come in and just plop a marijuana dispensary down anywhere we want to. There's licensing, there's state regulations, there are county regulations, and community regulations. Every person that I know that works in this industry is mindful of what we're doing. We are not human beings that are going to come in and disrupt other people's personal freedoms and life and ability to enjoy their homes. So you can look at it how you want to. It's written specifically to ensure that counties don't ban it.
Right, and that was my point, is that if you want to opt out, you won't be able to. Okay, thank you.
All right, the final question that is addressed to both of you. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to give it to you first, because then after that, I'm afraid we put Terri on the spot again for the rest of them. It says, marijuana is a victimless crime. Where in the Constitution does it say this should be illegal?
It does not. And marijuana is a victimless crime. It absolutely is. And it's actually not a crime, it's a plant. I mean, we get into this debate quite a bit. South Dakota has some beautiful feral hemp and cannabis that grows here, and we, by making it illegal, disrupted nature. And what cannabis advocates are trying to do is reinstate that balance. Because prior to prohibition, and I'm just gonna go a little off track here, so give me a minute.
I'll give you a minute and a half.
Okay, I'll take a minute and a half. Prior to died that night while I was working on the hemp bill, so I'm gonna try not to cry here. I had a conversation that day. Prior to prohibition, hemp grew fairly in our farmyards. It grew everywhere. It grew in our fields, our animals ate it, our cows consumed it, it was in our dairy products, our chickens ate it, it was in our eggs, our pigs ate it, so it was part of our food source. if you look at the evolution of disease in the United States and you start looking where prohibition started, you will look at things that have come along that we never saw before, such as cancer, mental illness, autism, because we have taken a nutrient out of our diet. We have removed it, stripped it from what our bodies have receptors to actually process. Like if you are researching, I really strongly urge you to look at the endocannabinoidal system and read all of it, because it will change your mind, it'll blow your mind, it will change your whole perspective. We were made to consume cannabis. Prior to 37, our disease processes were we died from accidents, old age. If you look at prohibition moving forward, and the things that our children struggle with now, it's because we've removed something essential.
And to you, Terri. Marijuana is a victimless crime, or in the Constitution does it say this should be illegal?
Okay, so I'm going to disagree it's victimless, because anyone who eats an edible and it doesn't kick in until a couple hours later and gets in a car and there's a car accident, I mean, there's going to be issues, and there's also issues with the high THC, which is not natural, the way that we're having the marijuana is now with THC levels that are off the charts. This is Massachusetts. These are Harvard doctors.
You were asked to cite your sources and provide them.
All right, I will give you those for tomorrow.
Since that's a point we've already brought up, let's not bring the point up anymore. Okay. We'll let her finish for 2 minutes, and then we'll have these 3 questions, and then we will do our final wrap up. Is that all right with you, ladies? Absolutely. All right, thank you. Go ahead. You have your 2 minutes.
That's okay. Let's go ahead and go through.
All right, ready for this? And once again, thank you, audience, for your patience with sticking it out for this very important conversation. It's been enlightening. Personally, I think it's been enjoyable. Probably you guys aren't feeling that, but I have thought I've enjoyed it. So thank you, audience. Thank you to both of you. Terri, is alcohol more dangerous than marijuana? If so, why is it legal?
And I knew this question was coming. And I will just keep saying this over and over again. My concern is that we aren't talking about the marijuana that was 1 to 2% THC. We're talking about levels that are off the chart, up to 90%. And these edibles are processed through your body in a different way. It gives you a higher high. It's with alcohol. Sure, if you know there is definitely issues with alcohol. If you were to chug Everclear or do all that and get in a car, the problem with marijuana is that if you're going to do these high levels of THC and then it doesn't kick in and you're thinking, well, I feel fine, and you get into a car, there's a big issue with that. And there's also the issue of this. I know you keep saying I'm hitting this over and over again, so I do believe there's an increased risk of mental health problems.
You still have a minute, so
that's okay.
Very good. All right. After years of using traditional treatments, doctors, therapies, medicine, etc., why should I not be allowed to use THC products as an adult?
And there is a piece of me that says, yeah, there's no problem with that, but I just don't. My biggest concern is that are you going to get in your car and drive? If you're a cancer patient, you're in hospice. My concern is that I think that we have minimized the negative effects of THC, and that there are some definite bad outcomes. And my heart goes out to those people who are suffering. But I hear the stories on the other side too. I hear the stories of the kid that is, I just heard this one on Saturday, this young man who had been doing marijuana, and anyway, he committed suicide, but he had been having a lot of psychotic episodes, and and I heard the story from his uncle, and it's heartbreaking because you hear the stories on the other side as well.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if you made a motion. Okay, very good. Just want to be fair if you care to weigh in. Finally, my 7-year-old son has a severe seizure disorder. You guys are going to have to help me out with some of the pronunciations on these. You would rather I put Depakote, is that the proper, okay, Depakote, and clobazam in his system than THC? THC will provide him more relief and fewer side effects. And I believe that is a statement, not a question. What would you like to respond to?
Well, I would just say Dr. Amen has written a book. He and the only reason I mentioned Dr. Amen is because he's actually looked at the brain, and he's done scans of the brain and the brain of youth who use marijuana long term, and so he can actually see what the effects are. So I would just encourage you to look that up because there is a negative there as well. But I would also say look at the studies from the 1960s that show a ketogenic diet was used for decades for children with epilepsy. There's other things that you can do. I am not opposed to using the CBD. I am opposed to high levels of THC and the negative impacts because that's not natural either. We're not talking about the 1 to 2% that you used to see in marijuana. But anyway, my heart goes out to anyone who is struggling with this. And listen, we're all struggling, hearing the stories from both sides.
Thank you. All right, ladies, it is now time. You are given 5 minutes for closing comments. I understand you have to do this again, or rather get to do this again tomorrow. So once again, I want to thank you both for your commitment to educating the public, to representing your sides. So since we started with Ms. Terri going first the first time, go ahead, Melissa, would you like to start us out with your 5 minutes?
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I know it's been a long evening and we waited through a long debate, good information on both candidates. So I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope you all walk away from this with a little education. And if you are not a proponent, I hope you walk away with a little bit of curiosity, that you will take the time to research your endocannabinoidal system and you will look at endogenous cannabinoids and look at what I talked about regarding the receptors. Many people don't realize this, but women, when we breastfeed, we actually make cannabinoids, so our babies test positive for cannabinoids due to that. So we're talking about a plant with many uses, a plant that has evolved exponentially since the 60s. It has evolved in research, it has evolved in knowledge and use, and what we're doing here in South Dakota is not, there's so many examples I could use here, but we're not trying to change the culture of our state. We are trying to bring health and wellness back to the families who struggle. I just want to thank you all again. And I do have one final question for Ms. Terri. You continue to bring up high THC levels. Where do you think high THC comes from? Like, do we manufacture this? I just want to know if you understand how THC levels differentiate or how we get to those higher levels. Do you have an understanding of plant, climate, growth?
Right, and I understand it will vary from year to year. For instance, right now in Colorado, it's about 17% for the plant. But when you're talking about edibles and you're talking about, edibles can be...
Edibles are amazing. They are amazing for cancer patients. Do you want to know why? Because I can work with somebody who is dying and has cachexia and can barely swallow, and we can put an edible this size, a gummy, in their mouth that will dissolve, and it will help them. They will be able to sit up, they can eat, they can interact with their family. So I think you don't understand THC.
I do understand that. I do understand the effect of that, but I also understand that a person who has high levels of THC from a product, from an edible, let's just use the example of edible that you're talking about, which is processed through the liver, which crosses the blood-brain barrier, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So So a lot of times it doesn't kick in the same way it would if you were smoking, right?
I know where you're going with this, but I don't anticipate my hospice patients crawling out of their deathbed
and I said
to
that,
go get in a vehicle
right,
to drive to Walmart.
And if you recall, I said that earlier. I said earlier that I'm not as concerned about someone who is in hospice. I did say that earlier.
I did say that, but that's what high THC edibles are used for. So I don't think you quite understand that.
But you can, in Colorado, you can go to the pharmacy and you can go and buy them.
No, you cannot. You cannot buy edibles.
Okay, well, let me.
Those are available on the medical portion of Colorado's program. Those are not available in recreational stores. I just want you to be aware that you are spreading misinformation by saying that it's not true. So those high THC edibles are used for dying cancer patients.
Okay, I will double check that. Thank you for bringing it up.
Okay, and that's time? All right, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you everyone for coming. I just want to say that it's a tough issue, and as I look more and more into it, and as I learn more, my heart goes out to people on both sides, those who want to use it for medical uses, those in hospice, and also those who have lost loved ones. And I've heard those stories as well. So I would like to see if we're going to go down this road, instead of having an initiated measure that's 26 pages long, that has kind of thrown the kitchen sink in it, has everything you can imagine in here, that there would be some boundaries around what we're doing here in South Dakota. But again, I just want to say thank you and have a good evening.
Can I say one last thing? So I'd like to tell you the evolution of those 26 pages. That bill was written with meetings from the Department of Public Safety, the Attorney General's office, the DCI, the Department of Health. Each and every one of those has weighed in on that bill over the past 6 years. They have given us suggestions. They have given us recommendations on what they would need to be supportive of it. Everything that those entities asked for is in that bill. So we have legislatively, and there are people in this room that have spent every single session in here advocating. Do you know what we hear from legislators? This is political suicide. So when they stop politicizing our health care, then we don't have to go through a ballot initiative. But because they politicized our lives and our children's lives for 6 years, that is why we are here. But we were considerate enough to sit down in private meetings with those entities and ask them what they needed from us to not fight us. And they got it. And that's why we're here today. I just want you to be aware of that.
And you do have a chance to do that.
And I would just say that I'm actually hearing from legislators that don't agree with this, that are concerned, especially with the constitutional amendment. I know you're saying what you're saying, but I was actually told that the constitutional amendment, because it has 3 subjects, that it's not in accordance with our state constitution, because it's only supposed to have 1 subject. And so I'm having a legislator who's telling me this. So I'm not sure exactly who you sat down with. I appreciate that. I understand, and I believe you that you sat down with all these people and that your team did. But I am also hearing from the other
testimony. If you want to go back and pull every medical marijuana bill that's ever been sponsored, because that bill has been sponsored in its entirety twice on both sides of the aisle. You can go back and you can listen to the testimony, and you can listen to them laugh at our patients as they walk out of the room or make snide comments. You can listen to the video and audio recordings of it. So please don't.
Hold on. First of all, I do want to address that. I mean, that's heartbreaking. Yes, and you and I are in complete agreement with that. I mean, that should never, ever happen. And that breaks my heart to hear you say that and hear that happened.
Because there are others in this audience who have sat and sobbed in committee to be turned down. I have a parent in Sioux Falls whose son went almost 2 years without seizures, who just got records. He's a former police officer. His wife is a nurse at two of the most prestigious medical facilities in the state. They went to.
We have 1 minute left. Technically, it's still Terry's, so we'll let her finish out. And then
Well,
we'll
I just
call
want to say thank you, Chastity, for doing this, and thank you to Colin. Where are you at? All right, and I know it's been a long day, and thank you to all of you for hanging in here, and thank you, Melissa, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you.
And that concludes this, ladies and gentlemen. I do want to echo that thank you to Colin. Had he not had the vision for putting this together, it would not have happened, and he went with the flow when this additional form came. So be sure to thank him for his dedication to political transparency and to our system. Have a great evening.